Before Supergirl ever reached a single movie theater, it had already become the most talked about superhero film of the year. And here's the strange part. Almost none of that talk was actually about the movie. Not the trailer, not the action, not the story. Warner Brothers and DC Studios spent nearly $290 million to make and market it. It was supposed to be the film that proved the rebooted DC universe could fly. Instead, it's now on track to lose more than $100 million. One of the biggest superhero bombs of the decade. This is the story of how a movie got buried by its own culture war, long before a single critic weighed in. And it started with the woman at the center of it. Months before release, while promoting the film, Millie Alcock sat down with Vanity Fair. Talking about the scrutiny she had faced ever since House of the Dragon, she said this: "We have become very comfortable having this weird ownership of women's bodies." Now, on its own, that is a fair point about the pressure that women in the public eye genuinely face. But for the core audience of a superhero movie, dropped right in the middle of a press tour, it didn't land like an observation. It landed like a challenge. Then, describing the film itself, here's Alcock in her own words.
What makes this film so beautiful is that it's not centered around a man, it's not centered around love at all. If anything, but we'll see.
Not centered around a man. For the single biggest four-quadrant genre in all of Hollywood, the one that needs absolutely everyone to show up. That one soundbite became the whole story. And when the backlash came, Alcock did not retreat. In a follow-up interview with Variety, she fired right back at her critics. "I didn't even say men. I said people. And they got so angry. I was like, you're proving my point." And she kept going, openly mocking the kind of people attacking her online. Someone's name, and then Data 4, Christian, which is hilarious to me. But whose opinion do you really care about? If you're pissing the right kind of people off, you're doing okay. Whether you think she was brave or reckless, the effect was exactly the same. Weeks before anyone had bought a ticket, the conversation was no longer about the movie. It was about her. And so, the internet went to war. On YouTube, the biggest voices in the room piled on, and they were furious. Nerdrotic called it exactly what his audience wanted to hear.
And what you end up with is a meandering mess of intersectional feminist gobbledygook with no heroicism to be found.
And Sydney Watson said the quiet part out loud.
There's certain fandoms that need to go to this movie for it to succeed.
And their core argument was simple and hard to just dismiss. A superhero movie lives or dies on its base showing up. And that base was being told, loudly and repeatedly, that this one was not for them. But, and this is the part the internet almost always skips, it cut both ways, hard. Because a huge amount of that so-called backlash was just plain ugly. Months of attacks on Alcock's appearance, even a mocking meme from the former Superman actor Dean Cain. The kind of pile-on that male leads simply never get. And even Anton Daniels, no fan of the film, drew a hard line.
Her performance in a vacuum is fantastic. It's just unfortunate that the movie itself is a vacuum.
Her performance, he said, was genuinely good. The attacks on her looks were unfair. This was never as clean or as simple as either side wanted it to be. Which finally brings us to the question the culture war spent months drowning out. Forget the discourse for 1 second. Was the actual movie any good? And here is where it gets genuinely inconvenient for everyone. Because on this, almost nobody disagreed. The mainstream reviewers and the culture war critics landed in the exact same place. Charlie, better known as Penguin X0, about as apolitical as a reviewer gets, summed it up.
It feels like they plugged James Gunn's formula into ChatGPT and asked it to try and emulate it the best they could.
Jeremy Jahns was just as blunt about it.
Supergirl, on the other hand, is big studio schlock that feels more AI than soul.
Across the board, they hammered the same things. A weak, forgettable villain, murky, ugly lighting, a story stitched together from other, better movies. and a hero whose powers get conveniently nerfed over and over just to force some tension. It landed at 55% from critics and a B- from audiences. Poor for a superhero tentpole. And even the film's fiercest critic kept coming back to the hero herself, the critical drinker.
People couldn't warm to this character because you gave us no reason to like her.
A protagonist the audience is given no reason to root for. And notice, even the critics attacking the film's politics landed on the same verdict. Not that it starred a woman, that the movie underneath all the noise was simply mediocre. So set the discourse aside completely and just follow the money. Supergirl cost about $170 million to make, plus another $120 million to market it. To break even, it needed to clear roughly $315 million worldwide. It opened to just $38 million at home, and then it fell straight off a cliff, down 76% in its second weekend, a brutal, historic drop, out of the top 5 entirely by its third. Analysts now estimate a total loss of up to $125 million. To see just how bad that is, compare it to Superman from only 1 year earlier. Same universe, same studio. That one opened to $125 million and finished north of 600 worldwide. It also did not help that Supergirl was slotted second, right after Superman, with the same powers and the same suit. Or that it opened directly against Toy Story 5, which swallowed the family audience whole. So what actually killed Supergirl? It wasn't any one thing. It was a perfect storm. And the order it all happened in matters. First, long before release, the press tour turned the film into a culture war lightning rod and split its potential audience into camps that were arguing about absolutely everything except whether to actually buy a ticket. Then, the movie itself finally showed up and gave the huge, undecided middle no reason to care. Mediocre, derivative, forgettable. Add a franchise almost nobody was invested in yet, and a Pixar juggernaut across the hall, and the core audience it so desperately needed simply stayed home. And here is the quiet, brutal truth underneath all of the noise. The people who did go and see it didn't even hate it. A B-, a 76% audience score. Not rage, just indifference. And when you need $315 million simply to break even, indifference is the one thing you cannot survive. And the real casualty here might be far bigger than a single film. It's James Gunn's entire DC universe, now facing the exact question all of this keeps circling right back to. Is anyone actually excited for what comes next? So, what's your verdict? Was Supergirl killed by the culture war? By a genuinely mediocre movie? Or by a franchise that nobody was waiting for in the first place? Tell me in the comments. I actually read them. And if you want the real story behind the screen, with no studio spin, go subscribe to The Screen Report. Watch this one next.